Welcome back, everyone. It's your boy Icon, and we're going over some more DC TV. We don't have our usually scheduled fall programming due to the pandemic. The shows aren't going to come back until like January 2021. Well, they're filming right now, but then some of them had to stop due to certain situations. But again, we're poised to continue this, going forward next year. So until then, the good people of CW decided they were going to purchase the rights to the TV series Swamp Thing that aired on DC Universe. As we all know, the show was canceled the day that it premiered due to tax break restrictions. I don't know why they just didn't shoot somewhere else other than Louisiana, but that's a different story. So CW picked up the show. They're going to start airing it, to all 10 episodes, which, hell, it might end up being 9 episodes because now that it's on CW, they're going to have to edit the bejesus out of this in order to be able to put it on CW. But I didn't get a chance to review it the first time that it came out, so I figured we'll review it now, which will give us something to, to discuss and to talk about during the fall while we get ready for our normally scheduled programming. So, Swamp Thing, episode 1. This is the pilot, but I like to call it The Green, only because of how the episode turned out. The episode starts where you have 3 gentlemen. They're on a boat in Louisiana because that's apparently in the bayou. Everybody travels via motorboat. 2 white guys and a black dude. One of the black dudes, he was the Blue Power Ranger in the Power Ranger movie, and he also played on Black Lightning. He was the smart character who got turned down for a grant when he was in college, and Tobias Whale scooped him up, gave him a lot of money and paid him to basically help him out with his metas and to open the briefcase. After he opened the briefcase for Tobias Whale, Tobias paid him with money in a brand new car, and when he was driving that brand new car to a stoplight, the car exploded, and that's how they killed his character and got him off the show. So, so he's dead on Black. Well, it's all one Earth now, but the actor, he went from Power Rangers to Black Lightning, and now he's on Swamp Thing. So in the beginning of the episode, the 3 gentlemen, I don't know if they were trying to throw explosives, they were trying to do like chemicals. I don't know what was going on, but they were basically trying to do some shadiness with the swamp. They were trying to throw some some stuff into the swamp, and apparently chemicals have been dumped in this swamp for years and years and years, to the point where the swamp is alive. Like the vines, the trees, like the entire bayou, the swamp is basically alive. And the swamp didn't take kindly to what these gentlemen were doing. And because the swamp didn't take kindly to what these gentlemen were doing, the swamp ended up killing all 3 of these people, stabbing them in the throat, hanging them out to dry, cutting them off, this, that, and the third. So these 3 gentlemen are dead, and all their equipment and everything that they were going to do, like I said, whether they were going to, do some exploding, do some dumping or whatever it is they were going to do, it's stuck in the middle of the boat now because now they're all dead. So now the next morning, it brings us to a school. There is a little girl who ended up getting sick. She was like coughing up like blood, looked like she was coughing up her lungs. and after she was coughing up, she passed out, and then they rushed her to the emergency room. Come to find out that whatever's going on with her, it's related to it is related. Well, they feel it's related to the swamp. The girl, she ended up going into a coma, and she's she's at the hospital. And she wasn't the only one. I feel like, I believe that a few more people ended up getting sick as well. So the whole town started freaking out because they were like, yo, there's this virus going on that we don't know anything about, so we need to do something. So they were trying to figure out, what they could do. Their doctors couldn't figure it out. So they called the CDC to bring in a specialist, which then brings us to Abby Arcane, Dr. Abby Arcane, who played Sophia Falcone in Gotham. So she's now on this Earth. She was Sophia Falcone on one Earth. On this Earth, she's Dr. Abby Arcane. She comes back to I believe it was Maury, Louisiana. That's where they were from. And she's from there. This is her hometown. So the CDC sent her back to her hometown to investigate because I guess they figured nobody knows her town like she does. As she's driving back into town, she's having some flashbacks of old traumatizing memories. There's an image that she sees of 2 girls playing on a bridge, and one of them standing on top of the bridge ledge, and then she just gets all like eerie and quiet. She lets the feelings pass through and she goes on about her business. So she goes down to the local medical facility. She's talking to all the doctors. She's just like, hey, like I'm here to help. Now there's this dude who's in the hospital. He's going through files. He's going through papers. He's trying to look up research and everything. Nobody knows who he is. The hospital people just like, oh, this guy comes in here all the time and he keeps like looking at our research and stealing our research. So Abby's just like, yo, what the hell? And then, he's just like, hey, listen, like they call security on him. He's like, listen, he says to Abby, he's like, hey, you're going to need my help eventually. So when you're ready for my help, just come and see me. And then they throw him out. So, so now they're trying to locate the girl's father, because like the girl had a daddy and the daddy wasn't around. The girl's in the hospital. They can't locate her parents. She ends up going down to the little girl's house to try to find, try to speak to the dad. A police officer shows up to give her assistance. The police officer's name was Matt. They called him Matt. Light-skinned black dude. He gets out the car. Him and Abby know each other. He's like, hey, we used to be cool in high school. Haven't seen you in 4 or 5 years. It's been about 4 or 5 years. So Abby left the town right after she graduated high school, and then she went off to college, whatever. So the two of them, they reconnect. He's a police officer now. So he was just like, hey, listen, I got a call that said Dr. Abby Arcane needed assistance, and I was like, that's bullshit. But they come to find out it really is you. They go into the dude's house. They're looking around. They're snooping around. They see a gentleman on the floor. They assume it's the father. They touch the dad and they're like, hey, bro, what's going on? The guy jumps up and screams. And then it's the same guy who was in the hospital who was digging through everybody's medical research. So now the cop got the gun on him. He's just like, yo, don't shoot, like blah, blah, blah. So they ask him, like, what's your name? And he's like, my name is Alec Holland, like the country. And Alec Holland, scientist, doctor, researcher, the actor who plays Alec Holland also played Greg in Power. So Alec Holland, he's just like, hey, listen, I was hired by Mr. Sullivan. Sunderland. Sunderland, that was his name. Mr. Sunderland, he said that Sunderland hired me to do research on this virus and on this whole disease. Mr. Sunderland, he's the rich white man that basically runs the town. He has a wife, and he paid Alec Holland to look into the whole situation, but he eventually fired Alec Holland because Holland wasn't coming up with the results that he wanted, or some practices that Mr. Sunderland was doing got very shady, and he didn't want Alec discovering his shady practices. Regardless of the case, he fired Alec, but Alec chose to stick around and to still look into the situation because he found some very interesting things going on there. So, when Abby's asking him, she's like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you here? And then he got his hands up. He's just like, listen, you're asking the wrong question. He said, what you need to be doing is pay attention to what's in the bathroom. So, so both Matthew, the cop, and Abby, they look into the bathroom, and then they see the little girl's father, who's completely covered in like seaweed and vines and everything. He looks like I thought that was Swamp Thing at first. I thought that was Swamp Thing sitting in the bathroom like combing his hair, but the guy has vines coming out of his mouth and everything, and then like the whole thing is crazy. And then Alex said, he's like, yo, I was just here taking a sample. So what ended up happening is, so they're looking at like this weird, like flesh-like, vine creature. And then all of a sudden the damn creature starts moving, and then like vines start busting out, and then everybody gets scared and they run for it. So, after they run for it, this is like, yo, there's some crazy shit going going on around here. And then Alec had said to Abby, he was like, yeah, but you're not going to get the answers that you need at the hospital. He's like, you got to go into the swamp and you got to investigate the swamp straight up. So Abby decides to go with him. The two of them, they get in a boat, they go down, they start investigating the green. They're taking samples of the water. He brings her back to his laboratory where he was doing all his research. He had a sample of he had like some weeds, some vines or whatever. He put them in a case. He took samples of like the water, and he poured the water onto the vines or whatever, and then the vines grew and almost busted out of the glass. So he told her, he was like, yo, there's something in this water, that's creating that's creating the plants and like the trees and everything to kind of like wig out, which is why we saw, and I don't know why it swallowed home like that little girl's daddy, but but they was just like, yo, something's going on. But they was like, all right, well, in order to find out what's going on, we got to take his body back to the hospital, perform an autopsy, take samples of his blood, whatever, so we can figure it out. The two of them are at the hospital. they're both, like Abby's doing the autopsy. She takes the blood sample from, from the Vine corpse or whatever. Alex starts looking at it. He's like breaking down its properties or whatever. And then all of a sudden, the vine, like, because again, like the guy's body was on the table with a hole in his chest now because Abby cut him open. The vine started coming out of the guy's body. And at that point, I was like, this is some real horror ass shit. Like the vines started coming out of the person's body. The bodies stood up. There were vines coming everywhere. They attacked Abby. The vines attacked Alec. And then the little girl, because again, that's her dad on the table. The little girl woke up because she was in a coma. The girl, little, because she was sick, whatever. She had a virus, but she had passed out in a coma. The little girl woke up from the coma, and then she was like, "Daddy!" And then she ran to the room, where Alec and Abby were. So the little girl's in front of the room now. She's looking at her dead Vine daddy trying to kill these people. Alec, like Alec goes outside to try to like stop Abby went to go save the girl. Alec comes in. Alec takes, no, actually he lit it on fire. Now that I think about it, he lit the vine thing on fire. So he basically killed, the dude was already dead, but whatever was remaining of that poor girl's father, he lit that shit up. And the little girl saw it. And I was like, damn, like I feel bad for this kid. So, so she lit him, he lit it on fire. The body starts burning, he hosed it down, and it is what it is. The girl ended up passed out. The girl passed out. She went back to sleep. Well, they ended up, Abby gave her like CPR, because she was like wigging out or whatever. She passed out. They gave her CPR. They woke her up. They left her in the bed, said give her an IV. And then at this point, Abby and Alec are just like, yo, there's some shit going on around these parts. So Abby, she needs to investigate. So she's just like, all right, I have a friend that I can talk to. She's a member of the press. Her friend who's a member of the press, I believe her name is Liz, black girl. She works at she is a member of the press, but she also works at her father's restaurant because her dad owns a restaurant and a bar. They go down to the bar, the two of them embrace. They're like, "Hey, girls, been a long time," this, that, and the third. And then she's asking her friend, she's like, "Listen, we just want some information about stuff that's been going on." So then, Liz tells her, she's just like, "Hey, I heard some rumors that people have been renting boats." Like frantically renting boats, going out to, I think it was like Cloverton Grove or something like that. There's like a specific place in the swamp where people were renting boats to go to. But she was just like, why are they renting the boats? And then she was like, I don't know why, I don't know what the reason, but that's what they're doing. So they're like, all right, so we'll go and check it out. Then Mrs. Sunderland, she shows up. She sees Abby. She sits down and she wants to talk to Abby like one-on-one. So Abby tries to talk to her. She's like, bitch, shut up. She's like, you gonna let me speak? So then she asked her, she was just like, when you were in ninth grade, she's like, when you were a freshman in college and you were partying and drinking, and then Abby like, ma'am, I wasn't drinking. She's like, bitch, I said, shut up, let me speak. So she's like, in your freshman year, when you were drinking and partying, I buried my baby girl and I slept in her room for a year. In your sophomore year, when you were trying to decide what you wanted to do as a major, she was like, I was drinking, I was drunk, I was drinking every single day and I almost killed my own liver. But she was like, but when your ass became a senior and you were about to start your new life, she was like, I got hit with divorce papers because my husband almost divorced me. And then that woke me up and it made me realize I got to get off my ass and change my ways, and then like try to fix my life. And then it also dawned on me, everything that happened to my daughter was your fault, because apparently the Sunderlands had a daughter. There was a moment where Alec and Abby even had a conversation and Abby told him the story. Their daughter's name was Shauna. Abby and Shauna were best friends. 2 days before they graduated high school, the two of them were on a bridge talking about the fact that they used to celebrate high school. And Abby then Alec was like, well, what happened to the girl, to your friend, and then Abby was basically just like Shauna. He was like, what happened to Shauna? And then Abby said that I killed her. She didn't explain how or why. She was just like, I killed Shauna. And I'm just like, at that point, I was like, well, if that's the case, why aren't you in handcuffs? So there's obviously a lot more to that whole story that we'll find out later as the story progresses. So Mrs. Sunderland basically ended up telling Abby, she was like, listen, there's a little girl in the hospital, because now that Mrs. Sunderland lost her daughter, you can tell right out the gate she has a soft spot for young girls and like children or whatever. So she was just like, out of all the 5,000 people that work for the CDC, they sent your old country. She's like, they sent your killing ass. And then she told her, she was like, can you save the girl? And then she was like, and then Abby was like, yes, I can save the girl. And then, she was just like, promise me. And then she was like, I promise I'll save the girl. And then she was just like, all right, bet. And then she said that once you save that little girl, she said, the minute you save that girl, I want your bony ass out of this town. I never want to see you again, because she blames Abby for why her daughter Shauna is dead. So, Abby, she picks herself up. Her and Alec, they go investigate. They end up going to the place where the three men in the beginning of the episode got killed by the swamp creek, by the green. They find their research. They find laptops. They find a briefcase that had chemicals in it. They find explosives, and then they take all that stuff and they bring it back to Alec's lab. They're going through all the information. They take the chemicals. And then they're just like, these chemicals are the same types of he said these chemicals have the same properties in it that the sample, just as the sample that I used to make that plant come alive when we were at the hospital. So he's like, there's something about these chemicals that's making the swamp freak out. So he was like, we gotta investigate, because he's like, these chemicals could be the reason why people are getting sick while the girl is sick. So Alec is just like, all right, I'm gonna go back because he said that, the boat that those guys were in had tipped over. There was a lot of stuff in that boat. So we got to get as many samples as we can. We got to get as much stuff as we can. So Alec's going back to retrieve more chemicals, more samples and everything. Abby stays at his lab. When Alec goes out there, he ends up, retrieving some of the samples, getting some of the stuff out. And then all of a sudden, this guy shows up on the pier. Alex sees him and he's just like, hey, can I help you? And the guy basically just blasted him in the chest with a shotgun. He shot him twice. And then he also took it looked like a rocket launcher or a flare or something. And he blew up the boat that Alex was in. And then when the boat exploded, Abby heard the explosion and she ran out there to go check on Alec. Alec ended up pulling himself into the river, and when Alec pulled himself into the water and he was sinking to the bottom, the plants and everything just started coming alive, and they just grabbed Alec and swallowed Alec up. Abby shows up, she's screaming for him. She's trying to find Alec. The swamp ends up attacking Abby. It knocked Abby into the water. It chased her out of the water. And then just before the swamp was about to grab Abby and drag Abby to her doom, this swamp-like creature comes out of the water, and Abby sees the creature. She screams, and then she runs and hauls her ass out of there. And then he comes out of the water, and then from what they showed, the swamp basically sucked up Alec and turned Alec into Swamp Thing. So now Alec has the swamp, the swamp juice all over him, whatever, and he looks exactly like Swamp Thing. So Swamp Thing now comes out of the water. He's standing on dry land, trying to figure out what happened to him, and then that's how the show ended. So so far this is very good. Again, I'm not a horror guy. I don't do horror films. I don't watch horror movies. I'm not a fan of blood and guts and gore and the whole thing, but I am a fan of the DC characters. I am a fan of Swamp Thing. I liked him in Justice League Dark, in the Batman Harley Quinn, in Justice League Dark Apocalypse. So I do like Swamp Thing. So, so I watch the show because of Swamp Thing, because of DC, and to see how the story unfolds. So that was it. That was it for for the first episode. Episode 2 coming next week. I did my review based on the episodes that aired on DC Universe, because I know that they're going to edit heavily on CW, but I am going to watch the CW version anyway, just to see how much stuff they chopped out and how much stuff they edited out, just to get a good laugh out of the deal. So let me know in the comments what you think of the first episode so far. What are your thoughts on Swamp Thing? What do you feel about now that it's on CW? Is it going to tie in with the rest of the Arrowverse or not? And let's say it's 10 episodes. We'll review all 10 episodes, and then by the time Swamp Thing ends, then Titan should begin. And for Swamp Thing, for the green, till next time, I'm out this bitch!